Next up, let's dive into a little bit of reflection. We're talking about why we started Dollcast. The main reason was simple. We wanted to showcase that trans women are, drum roll, mostly normal women. We wanted to move away from the sensationalism that proliferates online and show that we navigate everyday life, career hurdles, relationships, and everything else, just like anyone else, but with our own unique twist. The point is to de-radicalize the conversation around trans experiences. So why did we launch Dollcast? Brie, I'll start with you.
Well, it's Kelly's idea. Kelly, this is all your problem. Like you came up with this scheme originally. So she was talking about she wanted to start a podcast. And one of the reasons I loved Kelly initially is she was willing to talk about this distance, the difference that she feels between non-binary people and binary trans women. And I want to be clear, like it's important to me. Like one of my really best friends on earth is Dana Simpson, Dana the Unicorn, Phoebe and the Magical Unicorn, the cartoonist behind that. Her partner's not non-binary. And they've been over to my home. Of course, I want to treat them with respect. But at the same time, there's a public policy difference. And Kelly, you were one of the few people that were willing to go forward and try to start that conversation. Not that you did it as skillfully as it could be done, but you had the guts to get out there and do it. And I want a space where we as trans women can sit down and legitimately talk through this stuff without the progressive fringe pushing us towards the maximalist position. I think trans people deserve a community, and that's why that's part of why I wanted to start this show.
I think that it's been for a long time that the non-binary community has really wanted to push that they are transgender and that they are no different than us. And it's frustrating to me because I just think we're two separate things. And if we were exactly the same thing, we would have the same exact name. Like there's a reason they call themselves non-binary and not trans. Even though they want to act like it's a subcategory of being trans. I just don't think it is, especially when you're not going on any form of HRT or making any type of medical transition. I think a year ago, I definitely had a lot more hatred for non-binary people. I mean, you can definitely find clips of me saying that I just don't think they exist. I think it's that maybe I just don't have an understanding of exactly what non-binary is, or at least I didn't back then. Because when you lump yourself with being trans, it makes me think a transition is taking place, right? Because that's literally what trans is stands for.
I don't think we started Dollcast though to I didn't start it to make us great against non-binary people. I didn't see any space for us to have a community as trans women where we could have honest conversations. That's literally it. And what I am so tired of personally is this. All of y'all are my sisters. When we talk, every single time the show is over, I feel energized. I feel happy. I feel like I'm talking to people that understand me, even if we don't all agree on stuff. And what I wanted to build was a place in the trans community people could go to look for meaningful connections with other people that were based more about what we agree on and what our shared values are, rather than enforcing this fringe progressive point of view on maximalist trans politics. So that was kind of my point of view on that. How do y'all feel?
Yeah, well, I think it's funny that you say that because in some ways I feel like I'm coming at it from the opposite direction of you, Brianna, where when I started talking about politics, I leaned much more into a kind of conservative worldview and kind of what Kelly is saying, where she used to be more down on non-binary. I think I was also leaning much more into the conservative side. And I think when I look back on that experience, I feel like there was so much more opportunity to make an affirmative case for my own existence and my own personhood and rights, and also my own ability to be so much more than just what the progressive, discourse has pegged us as. And so I really wanted to talk a little bit less about politics and talk more just about cultural stuff and get to the values which are really animating all of our lives that are kind of to the side of the really divisive topics.
Yes. Oh, I so echo that. Like, I think for me, I mean, I wouldn't say like I don't think I was ever like not for the non-binary identity necessarily. I think it's just like for me, figuring out like, how can we make policy that is sustainable for trans people? Not saying we're making policy, but like, what does that look like? Like exploring like the ins and outs of what makes our community tick and like what works for us, because it's like, I don't know, I just see a lot of people that aren't making the transition get swept up in our same like identification, and then people are like, oh no, we don't support that. Like, I'll never forget when I was talking to a friend recently, and she was at her PFLAG, which is an organization that like helps, trans people or gender nonconforming, anyone adjacent in that space, talk about trans stuff and like figure themselves out. And there are people, she was like, yeah, there's like literally so many, there's about like a quarter to a half of the people have done nothing to transition. They're just completely regular like presentation. And they're like, I'm transgender. I'm really a woman inside. And they haven't done anything to transition. And no one wants to say anything negative because they don't want to hurt their feelings. But then like everyone's like, yeah, you're so valid. And it's like, but you can't make policy on that. And it's like, and I mean, I get where they're coming from, it's like, they want to, support them. They want to help them. But what does that actually look like? Is it just validating, or is it like, well, let's help you get a plan together, get yourself independent and figure out how to transition. And so for me, Dollcast is that space to kind of help conceptualize and understand how to make transition work in like a tenable way.
No, I fully agree with that. And a big problem I have, Taf, I suspect you are going to agree with this as well as you, Kelly, is there's a message out there that politics is the solution to any stress with transition, right? Like if you're not being treated well as a trans woman, well, the answer is just to wait to the communist future that is invariably coming, where gender will be abolished and all this stuff is going to work. And it's like, no, actually, if you're really depressed and transition hasn't fixed all your problems, maybe you need to go to therapy. Maybe you need to work on some stuff with your presentation if you're transitioning. And something I feel like your generation has really been cheated out of is that kind of outcome-focused community that will sit there. Like, I remember when I first transitioned, and this was, oh my God, this was a long time ago, but like you would go to a support group and there would be a form that you would fill out and would say, like, give this girl, like feedback on her appearance, be kind and compassionate. And you would sit there and say, like, okay, this is something you can do better. This is something you can do better. I think it's really hard today because we're not getting that basic culture that tells you how to integrate and go out there and live your best life, where it's not just about being a trans woman, right? I think it's all about this fringe progressive political project to destroy gender that is just, I don't think it's why any of us transition. So I just wanted to make a community where girls that do want to integrate can come hang out.
Go ahead, I was just saying, it tells me that they want to like abolish gender, because I think a lot of like non-binary people feel that way, where they're like, oh, what's wrong with creating a genderless society? I like gender. I like that there's like men and women. And that's not to say non-binary people can't exist, but if you want to make the whole world like a genderless society, I just feel like you're kind of like killing sex, like in general, in a way, because like, what is there, not to say like non-binary people aren't attractive, but I just feel like the whole dynamic of masculinity and femininity is the basis of sex for so many people, besides if you're gay or lesbian, obviously. But even then, like lesbians are attracted to femininity, and half the time there's a more masculine and more feminine. Same with gay men and their relationships. So I don't know. To me, creating a genderless society isn't really something I would ever want.
Feels like erasure, honestly.
Right.
That's my entire reason of transitioning, was to get out of one gender binary and be into the other. So they're literally talking about erasing the thing that I consider my life's mission, if that makes sense.
It's so interesting to hear you guys talk about this. I guess I didn't even realize, like, going into this, that you had like very specific topics that you really wanted a place to express. I think one of the things that I liked about, Kelly and Brianna, you really brought this to the forefront, and Schyler, you continue to bring it every week, is like this radical honesty. And I like that Brianna and Kelly, like I see you guys on Twitter and you're so willing to take stands that are not necessarily going to be popular. I think that a lot of our best topics are opportunities where there's something that is real and it's deep and it affects everyone, but it's not talked about. And it's not talked about because everyone's afraid of offending people. And I think we need to have conversations about things like non-binary people and like the differences in how non-binary and binary trans people experience dysphoria. Like that's an uncomfortable conversation because it's easier to pretend that we're all experiencing the exact same thing and need the exact same things. But maybe it's better if we can really meet people where they're at and we can like reconcile these elements of the trans community or of culture in general, which are like a little bit uncomfortable, but have just been seething under the surface and causing us so much distress because we see them manifested in politics and we can't talk about it and they just keep on happening. So that's why I'm so excited for this.
How can this be a community, Taf, if we can't have a conversation? Like, how can it be a community if the maximalist view is the only one that's out there? You know, like, look, last week's episode, we all talked about how flawed we think the idea of AGP is. We think something is there. I think all of us would agree the model is insufficient. Sky, I saw you like me on liking my comment on Twitter, talking about AGP being like a zombie bite, where if you get one little hint of it, it's all that defines you. Like that's the way some people talk about it. And, you know, I know that's not the way y'all feel, but there's an entire segment out there that just wants to pretend like this doesn't even exist. And that's maximally enforced. How is this a community? If, like, Taf, you and I can have shared an experience that's so deep and so fundamental to who we are, and we can't, like, really deconstruct what it means or where we need to go from here. I just think so much of the trans community is based on groupthink and silence. And it's not what I want to build together.
That's how I feel. And it's like, it's so much more than just like, you know, we have like these specific topics in mind, but I think it's really the approach that is important. It's like the willingness to just have these conversations.
Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off, but I like can't agree more. I mean, I'm going to come back to this because really like the reason I started Dollcast with you all is that 2023 Public Religion Research Institute survey that literally says that decline for LGBT rights, trans rights included in that, especially among young Republicans aged 18 to 29, is dropping. Like for the first time, it's dropping. And it's like, I think it's because of those sensational stories proliferating on the internet. I mean, Isla Bryson, Chloe Cole, detransitioner. I mean, they're like all these stories that are just painting trans people in a negative light. And I want us to change that narrative. Like, I think with Dollcast, we're actually like amplifying something that's real and relatable to so many people and breaks those stereotypes that are otherwise like out on the internet floating around. And we're actually having conversations that are going to help people have real understanding. It's like, we need a show that just gives that like light to everyday trans people living normal lives. And not only just living normal lives, like flourishing in their identities. I mean, I see all of us are doing well. We have jobs, we have like homes, like we're doing real life, we're integrated. And like, that's been my story. And I just want to see us continue to elevate more stories like that show the positives that can actually come out of transition.
Yes.
When like, our world is just like full of despair right now. We need to like sprinkle on some hope.
I love that so much. Okay, something else I really wanted to do, and maybe this is a little bit emo, but I think one of the hardest, most toxic aspects of the trans community is the way it takes its turn devouring everyone. Like, Kelly, the way you've been treated by the trans community really upsets me. Just being 100% real with you. I think you are a very sweet young woman who really has a talent for saying things in a way it's a little provocative and it really gets your attention. It really starts a conversation. I love that about you. I have always loved you. And to see like the way the community has made a mission to hurt you, it's not what I want to build together. So I feel like one of the ways I can help be a leader is to just model something different, where if you are looking for a real community of trans women that are like you, that are just interested in meaningful friendships, where we can talk, like you can have your back, and we can have fun conversations about fashion, like we're about to in the next topic, or talk about, like Kelly and I had a discussion on the phone the other day about your boyfriend and my husband, and like what it's like being in a relationship with a cis guy. I think other trans women out there desperately want these real relationships in their life. And I think it's hard because the trans community has taught all of us to be so suspicious and scared of each other. And I think there's just a real need for us to have something positive out here where we can love one another and respect each other and find real meaning in those friendships.
Yeah, I think a huge reason that we're not hitting on, I mean, at least for me, is like I kind of just wanted to start a podcast just to like have something to do every week and just like create like friendships with other trans women. And just because that's not something I had really ever like had before, especially with how like, I mean, I know you say like you don't like the way the community treated me, but honestly, some of it was deserved because I mean, maybe not recently, but like back like a year ago, I feel like I was pretty brutal with like the things I would say and the conservative takes I would have. Like they were very extremist. But I really just kind of, I mean, maybe it's not how it started out, but I feel like now a huge piece of this, a huge reason why I like to do it is just I like talking with you guys every week and just like having something to look forward to.
I love that. Yeah. And I feel like we can show how to politely disagree and respect each other and not let that cause bridges. And Kelly, especially for you, show like what forgiveness and just like starting fresh and like I don't care at all about any of that past stuff that you're talking about. Like I see you and I'm like, you're awesome. You're really cool. And I want to see more trans women like you stepping up. And like, that's all I care about. Like, and I love talking to you all on a weekly basis.
I can't think of any other project idea where I look forward to our team meetings and I feel better after the team meetings. Like, I love this.
Same. Oh, awesome. So how do we feel like the launch went?
The reaction was pretty positive on Twitter. I think the reaction on TikTok was good. And I think, you know, it's one of these things where we are committed to this for the long run. And I think this is good stuff. We're going to build an audience. I can't wait to launch the Discord and get people there. And like I've launched a lot of different social media projects for companies and politicians and other entities. And our first day metrics were extremely good. So I think there's clearly an audience here.
Yay.
Do we want to talk about some of the haters on Twitter from the launch? Or?
We could.
We should. I think you should.
Okay, let's do it.
I mean, there was the Brickcast tweet. I think that was probably the biggest one, right?
Yeah. What did it get? 4 likes? I don't.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. A lot of people like, I don't know, like they were really mad that I feel like just they didn't like seeing like such a diverse group of trans women being together just because I feel like we're all kind of from like different lanes and it was bizarre to them that all of us were even doing a podcast together. But then I just think it's so typical of the trans community to immediately just go for looks and to be like, oh, you're all bricks. And it's just so funny. Like, I don't know. It makes me sad. It's kind of like what we were just talking about with how the trans community is just so mean to each other for absolutely no reason. But that's how cis women are too, right? Everything is just so high school all the time.
Right. Hey, diversity is our strength. That's what I think. And I see it too. Like we all bring something here and like bricks is such a cope to me. Like I don't know where that comes from, but it's like, I mean, no, I do, but it's like, really? Like that's the worst. I mean, that's not that bad. Like it just kind of bounces off of me because it's like, doesn't matter. I'll step out and I'm a woman anywhere I go. It doesn't matter. It's like, so I don't know. Bricks just didn't really faze me.
I love that their attack of me is to literally drag up a picture of me from like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
It's like, do you have any idea how much plastic surgery I've had between now and then? Like, come on. Like, you want to
probably a little flattering. The soul. Yeah.
It's like attack me with what I look like today. Like, come on.
But it's like, even if you didn't, though, it's like, first of all, you didn't look bad before plastic surgery at all. It's just, I don't understand what is with going for the appearance all the time. I think it's because just we as trans women know how insecure it can make us, just because I feel like we've all dealt with that, especially at the beginning of our transition, and just with the way the beauty standard is for women in general. It's just, I don't know. It makes me so sad that is the go-to every time. But I get it, though, because they know where it's going to hit us in the heart. And it's kind of like Taf was saying, it's interesting how we all react so differently to criticism, because like, whereas me, I feel like I get really triggered and like really in my emotions, whereas Brie, you kind of seem like in the middle, and then like Taf just kind of makes a joke out of it.
Yes.
Rolls off her
I
back.
love Taf's response.
That was such a funny reply. I love that.
Yeah, I thought it was funny too. I definitely have like, if you're going to critique my response, I definitely tend to be like a little, maybe too self-effacing, where I will like totally play into it and be like, haha, yeah, like here's like my worst photo. Like you can call me a brick, whatever. So I think for me, it's always a matter of also trying to assert myself and also like draw those boundaries and to be like, I'll joke about it. But at the end of the day, like I want to be able there to like defend people that I care about. And I think having that standard is really important. And it's like what we're talking about with why we're starting Dollcast. Like I felt like when I was being, kind of conservative online, I was like playing into a certain vision of me. And I say this over and over, but that happens so often when trans people want to critique the sort of trans activist narrative. They end up just playing into a different narrative. And so, I think it's important to like stand up for yourself at the end of the day. And so I'm also working on that for sure.
Oh,
Heck yes, Taf. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So I think, is that a good segue to our
good.
topic?
Stay tuned. Come join our community. If you're tired of all the toxic trans politics, if you just want to hang out, if you just want to talk fashion, like our next segment is going to be about, like, come join our Discord. Come hang out with us. We would love to have you.
And I will say too, to close out that like last topic, I'll just say like, I think the most rewarding part for me was just seeing all the comments from viewers that like felt seen and understood by what we were doing, like on board with our mission of like showing normal trans women. It's like everyone agrees this is sorely needed. And seeing those comments just like, warmed my heart so much. Way more than any of the haters or any of the negative comments. So
I totally agree.
There was way more positivity, which honestly we probably should have focused on more when we were talking.
Of course, it's more fun to talk about the negativity, but it was overwhelmingly positive. And I think that's because there's so many people who really do like feel the same way, and there's just no one out there willing to say what they're thinking. And so having someone do that is really valuable.
It takes a lot of bravery to break the toxic spiral and try to build something new. And it's so interesting because like at the end of my career, I don't want to be known for Gamergate. What I want to be known for is someone that helped set the trans community on a healthier direction. And I'm not telling you that everything I do is perfect or well thought out. Like I shoot my mouth off all the time and make mistakes. But I really think this is an important mission, and I don't see anyone out there trying to do it. And I'm really honored doing it with the three of you. And I don't know. I was so honored when I asked all of you to do this, and you said yes. So.
All right, we're getting sappy. Let's keep going.
Okay,
Before I start crying of happiness.
Oh.
Okay. All right. So now we're going to segue into